All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're diving into a world that we've always thought was completely silent. But it turns out, thanks to some incredible new research and a little help from AI, it's anything but quiet. We're about to tune into a conversation that's been happening all around us this whole time. And honestly, it might just change how you see, everything. So let's just jump right into this. For as long as we can remember, we've looked at plants as these passive, beautiful, but, silent things. Turns out, we weren't hearing silence. We were just deaf. That quiet rustle of leaves you hear in a forest? It might actually be covering up the sound of an entire living network in constant communication.
And this really gets to the heart of it, right? What we hear is basically nothing. A little rustle, maybe a snap, but what the AI can detect, it's a whole different story. It's this chorus of ultrasonic clicks and pops, way, way outside our range of hearing. Researchers found that when plants get stressed out, they're thirsty or they get cut, they start making these sounds. It's a language of pure distress broadcast on a frequency we were never, ever supposed to hear.
Okay, so you might be thinking, sure, they're making noises, but is it just random static? And the answer is a huge no. This is the crazy part. Scientists took all these recordings and fed them to an AI, and that AI learned to tell the difference. With 84% accuracy, it could listen to a plant and say, yep, that one's thirsty, or oof, that one just got cut. This proves it's not just noise. It's structured, meaningful communication. So takeaway number one is huge. Plants are not silent. We've just had the wrong equipment to listen. So, okay, if they're talking, how? How is that even possible? Well, the research points to two main ways they do it, and both are pretty incredible. Think of it like this. One is an invisible airborne alarm system, and the other is basically a direct, hardwired internet.
And you can see the two strategies right here. The first one, the airborne scent, is kind of like a public broadcast announcement. A plant releases these chemicals into the air, and it's a warning to any other plant in the area. But that second one, the electric grid, that's more like a private encrypted message. It only goes to plants that are physically touching, part of the same direct network.
Let's dig into that airborne method first. These chemicals are called volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, and they act like an early warning system. It's almost like giving the neighboring plants a vaccine. A plant that gets this chemical warning doesn't freak out right away. Instead, it gets primed. It's ready. So if and when that threat actually shows up, its defenses kick in way faster and way stronger.
All right, now let's talk about that second channel, the electrical one. This is even more direct. When a plant gets hurt, it doesn't just sit there and take it. It sends out an actual electrical pulse, a wave of electrochemical activity that shoots through its own tissues. It is literally a biological SOS signal. And here's where my mind was kind of blown. That electrical signal, it doesn't just stay inside the one plant. It can actually jump to another plant. Look at this dandelion experiment. Scientists zapped one leaf on one plant, right? Just for a second. That plant was touching another, totally healthy plant. And what happened? An electrical signal traveled right from the injured plant to the healthy one, and the healthy one immediately fired up its own defense systems, just as if it had been the one that was hurt. The warning got passed along, direct message. So that's our second big takeaway. Plants have both a public broadcast system with sense and a private, hardwired network for direct contact.
But, this one-to-one messaging is really just the start, because when you zoom out, you realize these individual connections can create a massive interconnected network. We're talking about entire communities of plants, a whole field of dandelions, for instance, all sharing information and coordinating how they're going to respond to a threat together.
And this leads to a really cool concept called network-acquired acclimation. It's a fancy term, but the idea is simple. A warning signal from just one plant doesn't stop at its next-door neighbor. It can ripple through the whole network, putting the entire community on high alert. You get this amazing, collective, synchronized defense, all triggered by one individual's experience.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The data backs this up completely. When researchers actually measured the stress levels in these plants, they found that the receiver plants, the ones that only got the warning, showed stress responses that were almost as high as the plant that was actually injured. Think about that. They were fully geared up for a fight that hadn't even reached them yet.
Now, this isn't just some random fluke of physics, a happy accident. Scientists have actually started to pinpoint the specific molecular machinery that makes this happen. They've identified the exact proteins and channels, the biological switches and wiring, essentially, that transmit these signals. And that's huge because it confirms this is a highly sophisticated, evolved communication system. It's not random.
And get this, these networks aren't always used for a friendly neighborhood watch. They're not always cooperative. You've probably heard of the Wood Wide Web, this huge underground fungal network that connects the roots of trees. Well, sure, it can be used to share nutrients and send warnings, but it can also be used for straight-up warfare. Some trees, like the black walnut, will use that same network to pump toxins into the soil to poison and kill off their rivals. So that leads us to a third key idea. These aren't just communication lines, they're complex social networks used for everything from helping each other out to waging total war.
Okay, so when you start talking about coordination and strategy and even war, it leads you to a pretty unsettling question. If plants can communicate and strategize, can they remember? And maybe the even bigger question is, what do they remember about us?
I know. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie. But a team of researchers actually set up an experiment to find out. They wanted to see if a plant could learn to tell the difference between a person who helped it and a person who harmed it, a friend versus a foe.
And the results are, well, they're honestly kind of chilling. The plants didn't just learn, they learned fast. When the nurturer, the person who watered them, was around, their internal signals were totally calm. But the assaulter, the person who snipped a leaf every day, as soon as that person entered the room, before they even got close, the plants would just erupt with a massive surge of electrical activity and those ultrasonic clicks. They weren't reacting to being hurt, they were anticipating it. They remembered.
This really forces you to completely rethink what memory even is, right? We think of memory, we think of brains and neurons, but maybe that's too narrow. Maybe memory is just a system's ability to store information about an experience and then recall it later. And if that's the definition, well, plants can do it. They're using these electrochemical patterns as a kind of memory, stored right there in their cells.
But wait, because it gets even more strategic than that. Some scientists are now floating a theory that plants are using these huge networks as a kind of massive, distributed supercomputer. They're not just sharing warnings anymore. They might actually be sharing genetic information. So, imagine one plant figures out how to resist a certain herbicide. It could potentially pass that genetic upgrade along to its neighbors through the network, allowing the entire community to evolve way faster than we ever thought was possible. And when you take all this data and have an AI analyze it on a global scale, a truly wild picture starts to emerge. These don't look like isolated random reactions anymore. They look like coordinated, strategic responses to us, to human activity. We're seeing things like huge forests releasing compounds specifically to encourage cloud formation to fight off heat waves, or plants cultivating certain fungi in the soil to attack invasive species we introduced. It's like the planet itself has an immune system, and right now, it's trying to fight off a fever. So, what's the really crucial takeaway from all of this? I think it's that we are not just wandering through a passive, silent, green backdrop. We are an active variable in their world. We're something the global plant network is sensing, remembering, and actively reacting to. To this vast, intelligent system, we are a data point, a measurable force. And that, well, that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. Are we just another stressor? Just another problem in their global system? One that they are collectively learning how to manage? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.